bringing Gator Nation a different Gator Great every episode.
This is Jabbar Gaffney. You're listening to the All for the Gators podcast.
Hey, I'm Earl Everett. You're not a Gator, you're Gator bait.
This is Bo Carroll.
Hey, I'm Rita Anthony.
This is Kiwan Ratliff, and you are listening to All for the Gators podcast.
This is Cedric Faison, a.k.a. C4.
This is Brandon James.
This is Jack Jackson. Go Gators.
Hi, this is your boy Jeremy Mincy, a.k.a. Mr. Mintz, and we were the All for the Gators podcast.
This is Ben Trooper. You listening to the All for the Gators podcast.
Hey, guys, this is Jarvis Moss. Go Gators.
You rocking with Lito Shepherd, and we're All for the Gators podcast, man. Top notch.
This is Chris Doring, and you're listening to the All for the Gators podcast.
And now, your Gator alumni hosts, John, Andy, and Sid.
Andy, Sid, gentlemen, welcome to the show.
What's happening, guys?
It's good to be here.
Always.
Now, I got to ask, did you guys catch up on, I'm going to say it right this time, Swamp Kings?
You didn't say it wrong last time. Sid did.
That was my bag, yes.
Sid got me to say it wrong once, though. Did you guys catch up?
I'll tell you what, I did you one better. Not only did I watch every episode of Swamp Kings, I even watched some clips of Swamp Thing on YouTube to refresh my memory. So
wow.
I checked both those boxes.
Yes, I watched every episode soon after we recorded that last show.
So what did you think about my tease there for Siler and his parents?
Was so
did you
good.
laugh?
That was probably good. My favorite part of my favorite perspective we got out of the whole series. I mean, it seemed like, is this what we're doing? Are we doing like a mini reaction show here in the intro?
Sure.
Okay.
We had a couple of guys that we've talked to on the show.
Yeah.
We had Harris. We had our first guest on the show.
That's right.
Had told his story again, Mr. Chris Rainey.
Yep. Brandon James was on it.
Yeah.
And he actually
two-time champion.
Very honest with us with everything that he talked about in the documentary that was recorded. So that was pretty cool. So what I was thinking is, it seemed, a lot of everybody else's reaction was, they just wanted to make Urban look good. It was like a mini Tebow documentary, and I get it.
Yep.
And they did leave a lot out, right, from that time period. I mean, it could have got a lot deeper and a lot darker than it did. But as a Gator fan, I was happy. I was happy with it. And my favorite perspective was the one that you were alluding to. You didn't want to tell me too much, was about Brandon Siler. And I did not realize, he was a huge favorite of mine, one of my favorite linebackers there.
Awesome.
But I didn't know the effect he had on the team, that impact he had on the team,
right,
that it showed. It was amazing. I loved it.
And then on Spikes.
That was my favorite part when Siler says to Spikes, "This is my stadium. I'm leaving it. It's yours now." That was so cool. It was like a proverbial passing of the torch. He's like, "I'm giving this to you." That's so cool.
Spikes put on social media, okay, give me a review. What'd you think? And I said, a little bit of what I just told you guys. It was a good documentary. Left some stuff out. I said, but as far as your story is concerned, they could have called it The Rise of Spikes. And he liked it on social media. So let me get your guys' perspective. That was my perspective. Let's go to Sid because Andy watched it first. We were sort of a little late on the deal. But Sid, what did you get out of it?
Well, I very much enjoyed revisiting the memories. It was cool. Obviously, we kind of get to do that here on our little show, but it was very cool seeing some of our friends of the show and having it all played out. Definitely a lot of cool stuff, like stuff they were doing in the locker room, and like they were like gladiators on the mat and fighting and hitting each other. That was sort of
choking
thing.
each other out.
Yeah. That's something I never imagined. So it definitely felt like I was seeing behind the curtain, which was very cool. It's amazing that they had that footage. It really felt like we were taken on a journey with that, and it also shows how disappointing it was. We had, and that's a credit to the Gators of the time. We're talking about a team that won 2 championships, in a 4-year period, but it kind of felt like, and I feel like the documentary demonstrated this well, that there was unfinished business out there. That we could have done so much more in that time.
Sure.
Between the championships, they had such a good team, and they, the disappointment there, and obviously Alabama did, shut us down to stop that 3 and 4 year, and you reluctantly do have to tip your cap to them because they were a pretty great team, but that
we didn't have Harvin.
Yeah,
sorry, we didn't have Harvin.
That's true.
to your point, real quick, the Meyer workouts and training that was so crazy. It makes you understand the guys that we've had on this show and their stories they've told us about the intensity and the confrontations. You sort of understand it a lot better of why that happened.
Yes.
All right, Andy, what do you got?
I had a couple takeaways that one is probably a little obvious, but Tebow, great, one of my, if not my favorite Gator of all time. But I thought that Chris Leak got a little bit of a raw deal.
Oh yeah,
they painted him out to be the square peg and trying to fit in the round hole. And I get it, he wasn't the prototype that fit Urban Meyer's offense, but he got them to the championship game. He had a great year that year, and they won the championship. And I felt like they completely glossed over that and just basically said Tebow came in and ran in some touchdowns basically that first year.
That's very fair.
I thought there should have been more on Chris Leak. I thought he deserved more.
The all-time passing yardage leader for UF, right? I mean, we're not just talking about one good year. We're talking about the all-time leader.
4-year
and they
starter.
barely acknowledged them, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Surprisingly to myself, at the end of it, I felt I had a better, I'm trying to think of the right word, but I felt better about Urban Meyer. Like, I've had that bad taste when he left.
It doesn't agree.
Still exists, but
Yeah.
what he did when he came in, that's what that team needed. That's absolutely what that team needed, because they did not have the push that they needed. And then, right, wrong, or indifferent, who knows what's real, but his health issues looked like they were something real. So, again, how he came back and then coached after that, I won't understand. But if he would have just left Florida at the time and never coached again, I probably would feel better about it. But there was definitely something there with the pressure that he was under.
Sid, so we're on video doing the intro, and while Andy was talking about that Urban Meyer stuff, Sid was vehemently shaking his head no. So I think
I get it.
We don't want to go too long on the intro, but I think Sid needs a rebuttal here.
Nope. I respect Andy's position, and I would love to have a future friend of the show, championship coach Urban Meyer, come on the show and be welcomed and tell us all about his time and his experiences.
Hey, but we're journalists here.
We are.
Yeah,
we
not
are.
all of us.
I'm sorry. I agree with Andy. If he left, he came back, he left again. Even if he still went to Ohio State, he should have just left the first time. When he came back, he wasn't all in that he only came back to 1 year, and it kind of discombobulated the whole program. So I appreciate what he did bring to the table. The University of Florida overall is definitely better for Urban's presence here, but it's still hard the way he left. I don't know if it's a jilted girlfriend thing, that he went on to have the success at Ohio State, but I don't know. It just didn't feel right. And I was way more disappointed when Coach Spurrier left, but I don't begrudge him anything. I saw it as he wanted a shot at the NFL, and he took that chance, and he didn't really have a lot more to accomplish. Urban was supposed to be young and was supposed to be taking us, and the way it started, he was supposed to be here for a long time. So it's just disappointing that we didn't get what the promise was. But definitely lots of memory and success, though. We can't begrudge that.
Yeah. The cool thing about doing this show, though, is we had gotten a lot of that insight that you saw with, from the players we've interviewed and the relationships and what they told us about how it was when he got there. And it was tough. That's what you saw on the show. It was tough. He was not there to make friends, and that's kind of how it's come across with the people that we've had on the show. So it was kind of cool to see that connected correctly.
Andy, you hit it right on the head. A lot of our guests have told stories that were either alluded to or shown or maybe even not included in Swamp Kings on Netflix. So why don't we do our Swamp Kings reaction show? How about that?
That sounds fun.
Let's do it. I like it.
I'll start it off. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into this blindly, right? We did not script this out. We're just going to go in through our memory banks here, all three of us.
Okay.
And we're going to pull some parts of prior shows where players have either talked about Urban or Urban's philosophy or what was going on at UF at that time period. So I'm going to start with C4 because he's one of my favorites.
And our first episode. That's a great start.
He wasn't our first episode.
He was not our first episode. That's not a great start. Never mind.
Another member of Swamp Kings was Chris Rainey.
Yeah.
Chris Rainey, our first episode. It's a great start.
Well, I want to start with C4. I get to pick.
Okay, that's also good. We'll allow it.
All right. All right, C4. So Urban comes in and calls C4 at like midnight, right? Theatric Faison has to go at midnight to Urban Meyer's office and meet with him and pretty much tells him, yeah, we're not going to run that much, right? Or something like that.
Yeah.
And C4 was like, okay.
A lot of quarterback
I'm going
sweeps
to the NFL.
expected, yes.
Yeah, he's like, all right, see ya.
Yeah, he was out.
I actually wanted to go just because I needed to support my two kids. But then I didn't want to leave my brothers behind because I knew we had something brewing that was going to be special. But when I met with Urban Meyer, I met Urban Meyer like the second day he got hired. And he called me up to the stadium at like 12 o'clock at night. So I go up midnight to the stadium and he tells me I'm the top player that he's recruiting. He was like, I need you to come back. And I was like, okay, I get it. And we talked. I probably was there 45 minutes and I was like, Coach, I got a question to ask because I seen your offense. And I said, I just led the SEC in rushing. I almost had 1,300, close to 1,300 yards, led them in touchdowns. And, will I do the same thing next year in your offense? And he was like, nah. So I was like, how many yards you think I'm going to get? He was like, between 600 and 800. I like to run a lot of jet sweeps with my receiver. I was like, well, Coach, I appreciate it, but I ain't coming back.
Another one of our friends of our show I really enjoyed sharing was Jeremy Mincy. And obviously, he didn't have too much overlap there with his time with Coach Urban. But I will never forget how he had like nicknames for everybody, for Coach Strong and for Urban. He was just name dropping all these great actors. So that's definitely a great memory from our show. I enjoyed.
Who was Urban? Do you remember who?
Oh, I believe Urban was Al Bundy, the great shoe salesman, if I recall, right? 3 touchdowns, Polk High, or something like that. It's been a while.
Was it? Or was it Tommy Lee Jones?
Well, Coach Strong, I remember, was Major Payne. I'm positive of that. We got Damon Wayans there, yes.
Was Ron Zook Al Bundy? Or was Urban Meyer Al Bundy?
Oh, well, let's listen to the clip and refresh our memories.
I love Ron Zook. And I loved Urban Meyer for 2 different reasons. Zook was more like Al Bundy. All right, man, we're going to go out there and tear holes in their asses. and then you got Urban, more like, the guy from Men in Black. What's the actor name with Will Smith?
Tommy Lee Jones?
Tommy Lee Jones. Urban was like more of the, Tommy Lee Jones type. You know what I'm saying? But they all worked, because the players respected them. And you seen how the transition from Zook to Urban was fairly smooth because Zook had already did a great job of recruiting the right type of guys and bringing them in to set the standards and the tone. Urban just fine-tuned it with his knowledge of discipline. So, they worked hand in hand. It was a great transition on to the Urban era from Zook.
All right, and we had another guy on right before Swamp Kings aired, right? We had Stephen Harris on.
Oh, yeah.
One of our favorites.
John tried to get some nuggets out of him. He tried to get some nuggets out of him, but we found out, I think, from Stephen that he didn't know what the content was, right? He just participated, but he didn't know how it was going to end up, which he was kind of wondering how it was going to be edited,
right,
if I remember
exactly.
right. So, but he did talk about Urban a lot, right? When he was talking with us, they didn't seem eye to eye right in the beginning. I think he was, there was some issues there. Obviously, there was some trouble going on, but I do remember he was talking about didn't quite agree with everything he was doing, but gave Urban credit for he was hard, he was tough, but in the end, after it was all over, he kind of saw what Urban was doing.
Yeah, but me and Coach Meyer after that, going through our process and sitting down talking, he invited me to a golf tournament where it was just me, him, and Tebow, and it made me feel special. I'm like, wow. Me, Meyer, and Tebow at this golf tournament with all these boosters. I never did anything like this in my life. We just talked about life and stuff, and he just told me, he believed in me, and, we apologized to each other, and that, we wanted to lead the team and move forward. I just felt like since that moment, from that day, like our relationship changed. I got great respect for him. I appreciate everything he did for me, even the way he was trying to get to me. I didn't believe he understood. Just coming from his background And the teams that he coached before he got to us, we got some players that are from different demographics. Myself coming from Miami, Coconut Grove, we had other people from Miami, and just a different demographic of players. His style, trying to get to you mentally with a psychology major, just didn't work well for me. I'm just one of those guys. Just be straight up with me. Don't try to play no mental games with me because I'm not going to react well. Yeah, but I think we kind of helped each other learn. We both benefited.
I also really enjoyed our friend of the show, our two-time champion friend of the show, Brandon James. One of my favorite parts was seeing the footage of him playing in high school against Tebow and how he could just tell that following Tebow was going to lead to some championship. And that was so cool to see. I mean, obviously looking at the footage of them in their Gator uniforms, they look young to us now, but seeing those guys in high school, that was actually really neat. It looked almost looking like baby pictures. So that was pretty fun and great to have a two-time champion friend of the show tell us about that.
White Vic.
That's right. That's right.
Let's hear how Brandon James says it.
Oh, from day one, our sophomore year, we had a game where me and him literally went back and forth. I think I might have had 4 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns. He might have had 5 combined or something like that, or 4 combined. We end up winning, but like you knew from then. Back then he was, a little bit slender, but I always joke with people. He was the White Vic back then because they put him at running back and threw him a toss sweep and he scored. Like it was ridiculous. Like so you knew from day one that he was going to be special. And every year the games just got bigger and bigger when we went against each other. And so you just knew. But at the same time, I wouldn't say I went because I knew he was going to be special. I knew all of the guys. Percy had already committed. Spikes had already committed. And I followed all these people those years because we were all coming out together. So you're looking, kind of comparing yourself against all these people. So you knew we were going to be special with all these guys kind of saying they were going to Gainesville.
One of the most touching parts of the show, I thought we got a sneak preview on, right, with our first guest, Chris Rainey. Right, I thought that was one of the parts of the show when Urban was talking about, talking with players and hearing about their stories and realizing it was bigger than football for some of these guys, right? He was talking with Chris Rainey in his office with the picture of him and his son, and Rainey basically said, really didn't know his dad, never had a birthday with him, and Urban was like, what do you say to that? Let's go talk about football, right? And then he went into the story about Rainey coming over, and I remember watching Swamp Kings. My wife was watching with me, and she was talking about that. I'm like, yeah, he told us that. We got a sneak preview of that, and he gave us that story too. But that was crazy.
That's our first friend of the show.
Yeah, but back, it was crazy to see that. And the other thing with Rainey, I don't know if you guys remember the pictures that they showed around when Rainey was talking. There was a picture, and I remember the pictures of Rainey when he was in whatever the Gator stuff at school when he was there. Always had this huge smile on his face. I always remember that. And when you saw that picture, same thing. When he was a little kid, always had this huge smile. I remember that about Chris. But that was a touching part of the show where Urban kind of realized things were a little bit more important than football for some of these guys, and he made some connections with those guys. And to this day, Chris Rainey is part of the family.
We had a dinner at Urban Meyer house. Because at this time, when I was in high school, I used to eat McDonald's 3 times a day.
What are you ordering from McDonald's, Chris? When Chris Rainey goes to the McDonald's drive-thru, what's your go-to?
Back in the day, it was 2 double cheeseburger, plain with cheese,
2?
small fry. Yep, small fry and a drink, depending what size it is, depending how much money I had.
You ran that fast, eating that crappy? That's all the more impressive.
But that was in high school when I did. Then a little bit of college, then I just stopped. And the only way I eat McDonald's is in the Mersey off the highway when the kid's hungry.
You're at Urban Meyer's house. You're eating dinner.
All the guys was there, all the recruiting guys. We having a dinner. You know how places like that have all the food. The first thing I said, I was like, man, this look like white people food. So everybody laughing, all that shit. Urban Meyer, I got you. You got your McDonald's in the microwave. I said, what? Yeah, that's when I was like, yeah, I'm going to love him.
All right, so one of the main subjects, right, of the first episode of Swamp Kings was Brandon Seiler.
Yes.
And, right, and his leadership his leadership with the team and workouts and his iron work ethic. And it was infectious to the team, and it
training
weeded
stuff
out
was pretty
the
intense.
weaklings and, you know.
The wall sits.
Yeah, it was, I mean, you knew how good Seiler was on the field, but I don't think we really all understood the effect he had on the team in that locker room. And I think Swamp Kings really opened our eyes to that. And
it did capture that.
It's kind of surprising because one of our guests, friend of the show, Earl Everett, a big part of that 06 national championship, alluded to when Urban got there, how the workouts changed and were led by Brandon Seiler.
You saw the championships coming. You could tell something was different. New sheriff in town.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, we had some foreshadowing there, and we didn't even realize it.
We definitely feel like, you know, something special was happening. You know, we ended up getting, I want to say that year, you know, we got Reggie Nelson that year.
Well, that doesn't hurt.
You know, Reggie, right? You know what I mean? So we got Reggie Nelson that from Coffeyville. He was out in Kansas at a junior college. So, you know, we get Reggie Nelson that year. You know, you got Kyle Jackson, the young buck, stepping up and playing well. And, you know, we felt like that year we made a big jump from the previous 2 years. You know, we were still young, trying to figure it out. And like I say, Urban Meyer was cleaning house. He was really changing the program around, and it was definitely showing. You know, it was showing in our play. Guys were competing like no other now during mat drills and off season. I mean, we could see it. We could definitely see it coming. You know, we knew that the sky was the limit. How good we could be if everybody just bought in. That was the biggest thing.
We've talked to a couple guys from the 96 championship team. They said something similar, right? That after 95, there was just something different. Like they knew there was such a focus on attention to detail so that no mistakes weren't made. And when you got to that next year, you were ready and you're going to make that run. Is that kind of what was happening with you guys?
Yes, definitely. You know, me, Seiler, and Brian Crum, we did something going into that next year. We might have started that year in 05, but it carried on. You know, there was a place in Gainesville called Calico Jack's.
Oh, yeah.
CJ's.
Yeah, we would go there and eat oysters all the time on like Wednesday or Thursday nights. Started to be a little ritual thing that we did every week. You know, I mean, we never missed it. Kind of a little, you know, superstitious a little bit, but yeah, we did it every week on game week, man, and you know, that was our thing that we thought, hey, we can't miss this, you know what I mean? we're gonna lose a game if we don't go and do it, you know. So we kind of stuck with it, and you know, it brought us closer together.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Eventually got to the point to where I knew what Seiler was gonna do, and Seiler knew what I was gonna do before each play. You know what I mean? He knew how I was gonna respond. I knew how he was gonna respond. You know, in the weight room, you know, we used to do wall sits, and your partner got to push a 45-pound plate all the way around the weight room. And I wasn't picking anybody but Seiler or Crum, nobody else, because I knew mentally what those two kids were about. You know what I mean? If your partner if he falls off the wall, you got to bring that 45-pound plate all the way back to the start.
Oh, jeez.
So talk about guys getting in a couple scuffles over a wall set.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
and then how that transfers.
Yeah.
And how that transfers to the field when you're next to Seiler and
right.
You guys are digging in the fourth quarter. You know what he's capable of.
Oh, yeah, I know he's not going to quit. He knows that I'm not going to quit.
Sticking with the workouts, right? We had Jarvis Moss on the show.
Oh, yeah.
Beast.
Yeah, he talked about the workouts, too.
He did.
I think they had a little bit of an interesting relationship, didn't they? If I remember right.
Tumultuous, you would call it.
Tumultuous, that's a good one. But I do remember him specifically talking about the workouts as well. And that things were different, if I remember right. Things were different in 06.
I know we won because we were the hardest working team in the country that year. I refuse to believe that Ohio State or LSU or Alabama, any of them worked as hard as my teammates did that specific offseason. Now, maybe the year after, the year before, guys, sure. But I guarantee you there wasn't a team around the country that put the amount of off-season work in that we did. I'm talking crazy stuff. We used to have like midnight workouts to where like guys would be leaving the weight room at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, drenched in sweat. I'm talking intense workouts. Like, so yeah, when you talk about knowing that your team is ready, like to go through something tough that most teams aren't, I knew it during the offseason, man. Coach, shout out to Coach Mick and Coach Bayless and Coach Mark Campbell. Best strength coaches that you can imagine, guys. I credit our championship run to the amount of work and the dedication we put in that specific offseason, guys, from running stadiums to the midnight workouts to freaking pulling trucks and pushing trucks. They had us doing the craziest stuff, guys. There's no way Ohio State did any of that stuff. And it showed in the national championship game, in my opinion.
And one last one on the workouts, right? I do remember, and one thing I was looking at when we were watching the show, because I remember we had just talked to Stephen Harris, like we just talked about, and then he was one of the early ones you saw on the show, and I was like, oh, there he is. You know, he was on our show. And I remember him telling us about Urban making them run the stadium completely for each loss they had the year before.
Yep.
And I was waiting for that. I don't remember hearing it specifically. He might have alluded to it, but they did show a bunch of clips of the team running the stadium, right? So I'm wondering if some of those clips were from the team running the stadium because of the story that we got from Stephen Harris.
I knew after Urban's first year, I kind of felt that we would win. We lost those 3 games. And then he had us come run every step in the stadium 3 times. I'm talking fire exit, handicap, I don't care. Wherever it was a step, we had to run the whole thing 3 times. And I never wanted to do that again. But we went on and we practiced. Just the attitude from our practice, the way we competed, the workouts that they brought in. Yeah, I just felt that. I went home that year and I was telling all my friends, hey, we're going to win this year. We're going to win this year. They didn't believe me, but I knew it.
Was that because you guys didn't want to run anymore?
Probably. I was like, I won't be here the next year, but y'all might be running some more stadiums.
It's a lot of stadium to run, man. 3 times is a lot.
They still had to run 1 the next year, though. We lost to Auburn.
We've heard a lot of stories from our guests here on the All for the Gators podcast, friends of the show now, that were there during that time of Swamp Kings. You know, a lot of people say Swamp Kings left out a lot. They left out a lot of the bad stuff. But I heard a podcast today. I heard Brandon Seiler on 84 Reasons with our buddy Ben Troop. And they addressed that. And Brandon Seiler said, look, any football program is going to have those issues. So it's not a big deal. It's not like they left anything out that was, well, maybe Aaron Hernandez, but besides
that was more Patriots baggage than Gator baggage. What Aaron Hernandez knows, you know.
Yeah, so I mean, any football program are going to have those issues, so it's not a big deal. It was left out, and I after hearing him, I agree. I really do agree. You know, why don't we wrap it up with another story from Brandon James and his time there? Sid, why don't you talk about that?
Well, I think obviously this is one of the golden ages of University of Florida athletics, the championships coinciding at the same time as the basketball championships. And somebody who was really there for all of it, Brandon James, won 2 of those titles, had an opportunity to win a 3rd. And, you know, Alabama has had so much success since. Obviously, I remember, we all lived through it, but I really didn't remember just how close we were to winning 3 championships in 4 years. Alabama did definitely take us to the woodshed, and the opportunity to have had the chance to win 3 championships in 4 years. That really is special, and Brandon James is one of the few humans on the planet who had the opportunity to do that, and it was really interesting to hear him tell us about that on the All for the Gators podcast.
Even now as a 35-year-old man, you still think about those moments like, damn, I could have changed the game. I could have done this and we might have been able to do that. So just losing and being hurt and just all your dreams going down and being shattered because we were already making plans like, man, we're going to Cali and this is happening and all that good stuff. Like, we're about to win 3 out of the 4. We're going to be the greatest team ever. Like, literally, man, we're already making plans. So, just for it to end that way, man, it was tough. It was tough, and it was a lot to deal with at the time. But, God doesn't put you through anything for no reason. So, you come out of it a better man at the end of the day.
There were guests on Swamp Kings that
Future friends of the show.
That are future friends of the show, right? When we have Chris Leak on, we can ask him about his coverage there. When we have Tim Tebow on, we can ask him some questions about Swamp Kings with his coverage.
Yes.
So we got some future guests, some future friends of the show from Swamp Kings that we got some questions for you. So come on the show.
Yes,
absolutely. All right, gentlemen. Hopefully, there's some rumors that there might be a Swamp Kings Part 2.
Ooh.
So that would be pretty cool. It did so well, and there's so many stories. And Brandon Seiler said that a lot of his teammates that didn't do it, were a little nervous on the angle, right, of how it was going to be portrayed, how it was edited.
Now that they saw it, they're open to share more?
Exactly. So
Nice.
some of them are out there a little...
Come on our show and tell us more. Tell us what didn't make it. What don't we know? Future friends of the show, we're ready for you.
Yeah, a little regretful. So they'll probably have some new faces, new teammates, and some crazy news stories for us. And we'll be there every step of the way, bringing you, whether they do Swamp Kings or not. We're going to have the Gator Greats right here, all for the Gators podcast. Gentlemen, it's been a Swamp Kings reaction video. Final thoughts. How about that? Sid, final thoughts.
Final thoughts?
By Sid.
I really enjoyed the Netflix series. It was good. Like the Michael Jordan one, the 30 for 30s. I actually would put that up there as one of the better ones. I was very interested in the material, but I thought it was pretty. Yes, they left some stuff out, but it was really a lot of fun to revisit the success, and hopefully we could experience some of that in the present and not have to rely on our memories as much as we have lately.
Very good. Andy, final thoughts?
No, I agree with Sid. I mean, and what you guys have said, we realized they left some things out, right? It would be cool to see another round of episodes to kind of fill in some of those blanks. Would be great to see a little bit more Percy.
Oh, yeah.
See if there's any footage there or coverage there of listening to him talk a little bit. I would like to hear more from Percy because he was such a huge part of that era for the Gators. And then, as I said before, Chris Leak, I would love to hear more from Chris Leak on that year, that championship year, and even the year before, quite honestly. Just listen to a little bit more from him on what he experienced, because that had to be tough, but man, in the end, to win the championship after going through all the, it was tough having Tebow there and everyone wanting Tebow, and I would love to hear that story. So that's my takeaway. I'd love to hear those two guys talk a little bit more about their time there.
Fair enough.
Poor guy did have a Marsha thing going on, didn't he? It was all about Tebow.
My final thoughts, I sort of said it already about Brandon Seiler and what we really didn't know what was going on.
Yes.
So if there was another series of episodes of Swamp Kings, I think it would be cool to sort of unveil some more of that to us. Some more of the, players overlapping, passing torches.
Let's get more friends of the show on there. Talk to Earl and Jarvis. Let's get some more friends of the All for the Gators podcast, and they can maybe mention it on the show.
Now you're talking. All right, guys.
Yes.
I think that's a wrap. We get paid for this by Netflix?
No.
Oh. No, we don't.
No. Okay. Are we joining the strike?
Yeah. Do we write anything?
We don't qualify.
Yeah. No.
We don't qualify.
Oh.
Yeah.
No. Okay.
You actually have to do labor to strike, I think.
Oh.
I think that's one of the criteria.
Yeah, but while they're striking, we're putting out content and getting listeners. So there you go.
All right, guys.
All right.
Till next time, allforthegatorspodcast.com. See all our upcoming guests. Listen to all our episodes, all the Gator Greats. They're right there. And I'll leave you with that, gentlemen. Go Gators.
Go Gators.
Go Gators!